Hey, what's up, guys? This is Lucas Burnley, and I'm here with my co host, TJ Schwartz. You're listening to the Edge and Flow podcast. This is kind of our conversational space to talk about all things making, design, just life in general, kind of personal improvement, all those things, flaws.
Yeah.
So,
Everything there is to talk about. We'll get there eventually.
yeah, apparently
Episode.
we're going to get there.
Yeah.
Neither one of us are busy, which is awesome. Now that we've reprioritized.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you not busy with, TJ?
CAD courses, major focus. Rebuilding all the fixtures, touched on that too, and designing a new knife model. Yeah, those are like the three main prongs, I would say. Continuing.
That's good. Those are two. What did we say a long time ago? How many things can you balance?
Yeah. About that many is the answer. Yeah.
Okay, we're at 3.
Yeah.
Nice. We got Discord up and running. Okay, which is pretty awesome. I'm very excited about this. There, I believe, is currently a total of 6 members. It's a pretty big number.
Yeah, I know. It's a party.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time keeping track of names. It's kind of crazy.
I know.
I want to dig into that a little bit. Where do you want to start, though? You want to start with the CAD? I know that's like on your mind.
Yeah, we sure can. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't have to talk too much about it, but
okay. TJ Schwartz course for kids who don't CAD good. Is that?
Yeah, that's the URL. Yep. No, working on the CAD courses, it's becoming a reality. I'm pushing it. It's kind of like actually the lead project right now. And so I'm recording a bunch of content. I'm re-recording because what I found is if I record the content in a little bit of a longer form, almost like a lecture, and then I watch it, I get an idea of what it sounds like, and then I'm now processing it down into smaller bites. So I feel like when I monologue, I get more points across, but it becomes disjointed. And then I listen to the monologue, and then I try to make it independently consumable, because the format I'm going for is it'll be a paid subscription would be what it would be called, but you're given access to a channel on the site where all of the videos that are in that channel are available. I can add and remove videos, and it just naturally just comes live to whoever's subscribed
to that channel.
To that channel, correct.
Got it.
And so what I'm going to have is a whole bunch of videos that are pretty basic, that are literally like intro to Fusion, like from the moment you turn it on.
Yep.
And so each one of those is going to be extremely segmented, because if you have a question like, wait a minute, what does that constraint do? You can go to that very specific video. But then below that, we're going to model a fixed blade in like some larger sections that are a little bit more like almost like a narrative way of doing it, as opposed to like totally segmented. So you'll be able to reference back to the segmented like nuts and bolts, but then continue like the linear progression through a knife in addition to that.
Okay. That makes, so when you and I were, or when you were essentially tutoring me, I had a notebook on hand and I was handwriting notes for basically everything you said, which we found almost doubled the time of any like skill building exercise. Because what I realized was that as you're moving through these things, you want to be able to use the skill, but more importantly, you want to be able to understand why you are using a certain tool. Coming from Rhino into Fusion, this was really hard for me, because a lot of what Fusion does is so driven by the constraints. Still the number one thing that I struggle with. So the ability for you to basically demonstrate how they're used inside of a knife, and then for someone to be able to go back to it, like that's huge. Right?
I honestly had no idea. I was kind of like frozen on the idea of how it would be organized and structured. And so I just decided to just start recording and monologuing, like I said, the basics. And it wasn't until I was I like set them down for a week and then watched them a week later. And then I kind of had a little bit of a fresh ear, and I was like, okay, I start to see by listening how it should probably be. So I'm trying to create like a solid product that, I mean, if I went the YouTube route and was just posting videos, you see a
Yeah.
lot of like, you almost call them like tips and tricks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem is like the YouTube algorithm shuffles everything. And
Totally.
so it's like you you have to get really good at like knowing what to search.
Right.
But if it's all in the same little screen and it's all chronological and it's just like there's no algorithm, there's no competing information. I'm trying to just make it like take a YouTube approach but gut it and make it curated and specific.
That makes sense. The other thing is like why would it matter doing a CAD course specifically around knife design versus like just doing online classes for Fusion? When I first started learning Rhino, I guess Rhino, I had learned AutoCAD. I'd started learning AutoCAD a little bit before Rhino, and it was like we were laying out a house. None of the techniques that I really needed or wanted to know were like in this. And then they're there, but it's so, at least for me, it was so kind of removed that there was no way to tie it in. I mean, like even with
Mhm.
Rhino, it's like you start modeling a duck and you're like, this is cool, but like this isn't like a mechanic. I'm like, there's nothing, dimensioned,
Yeah.
mechanical.
Yeah.
The way that you work inside of Fusion is, man, it really is like, not to like, blow smoke, but like it opened my eyes to process. I just stopped myself from saying it. But but they're like hard learned lessons. And I've seen enough other makers use Fusion to know why the way that you do it is kind of unique.
Mhm.
Let me ask you this though. What are you doing a model in there? So like you obviously you're modeling a knife.
So I haven't got that far yet. I've been really
Okay.
bogged down with like the intro level stuff.
Okay.
So, it's going to be a fixed blade to start, just because
Yep.
that's the most approachable. But I don't know. I haven't approached what like I would design specifically. The thing is, I don't think I would get too bogged down into it being like, oh, this is a finished knife that I would make today and sell, because I'm more interested in what would it what would the knife look like if it integrated a lot of the techniques
Yeah.
that could be used, and so it might be like over designed because it
Oh,
ends
I
up
like that.
you know what I mean? Because it has all the bells and whistles that would teach you those fusion
Okay,
tricks.
hear me out on this part. This is where I'm going with it. Um, Great resource for Fusion has been Titans of CNC,
Mhm.
right? It's pretty cool. What I loved about the way that they did it was essentially you're just building. I mean, it's just a random part, okay?
Mhm.
But for a learner like me, and I think there's a few areas where this really starts to make sense. You're able to actually take those parts all the way through manufacturing.
Mhm.
Seeing that entire workflow and being able to hold of like a three-dimensional part was huge. When I did their first exercise, I just 3D printed it.
Mhm.
But your course might have some like secondary effects where it's like, okay, I know I want to learn like how to design a knife. I don't actually have CNC. Maybe I don't have knife making equipment, but I have a 3D printer. If you essentially give something that is like an open source design,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of value in people being able to kind of mess with that as a route
Yeah.
to like visualize what it is to create a product.
Yeah.
But it also, from like a standpoint of a way for people to show also like what they're doing, like they can be like, hey,
Yeah.
check this out. Like I got all the parameters on my 3D printer set up and it ties back to you, which like on a marketing side is rad too.
Yeah.
Kind of
My
fun.
I agree. There's a good chance you like, now that you've said that I will just make the fusion files available for download if you're like
Mm-hmm.
part of this, course system, that you could just, that way you can look at it and open it and just tweak it.
Right.
But one of the things I want to avoid And this is something that I've seen in a lot of YouTube videos about like different designs and knives and things, is like what they're teaching is how to design one of my knives.
Totally.
And it's like, I don't want this to be how do you design a knife like me?
Right.
It's how do you use all of the tools of fusion at your disposal to design your knife?
Right.
You know what I mean? So like I don't know that the knife that I'm going to design is going to look good. It might look horrible.
It shouldn't look good.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
not what I'm saying. It shouldn't be like something where
Yeah.
you're like, oh yeah, I'm making like the Schwartz knife and it's awesome.
Yeah.
It could be a butter knife.
Yeah.
It's about the techniques, but I think that the ability to create what you are visualizing is one of the primary chasms that a designer has to cross in
Mhm.
as they progress into fabricating, making, manufacturing anything. To be able to see something on a screen and then actually hold a part is huge. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, maybe that person has a laser cutter. Cool. Just download that file and at least laser cut a template.
Mhm.
You have a 3D printer? Great. 3D print the scales.
Mhm.
I just think that ability to kind of engage, I think you will get a return on the investment that outweighs. Well, I guess I don't see a downside. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
you're not going to put in one of your models and be like, anybody can make this model. The knife is essentially going to be like, it's almost in my brain. I'm just seeing like a 4-inch drop point hunter. It's like neutral, the
Mhm.
most neutral knife shape in existence
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
with all of the techniques to get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. No, it's going to be fun and like I said, getting into I'm really looking forward to getting into recording the designing of the knife
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like I thought the fundamentals part was going to be the easy part. It's definitely like orders of magnitude harder than the design the knife part because I have to try to cover everything. And
Right.
in fundamentals at that level, the width of information required that's to be recorded is going to be like hours and hours of content to
Right.
like this is all of Fusion 360 that I would recommend using that I use in segmented pieces. Whereas if I go to designing the knife, I can be a little bit more linear and direct and like have a little bit more tunnel vision. And right now I have to think like I'll be explaining something and I'll see like there is a box that's over here that you could also theoretically use. I need to add that and it ends up being substantial. So I'm excited to design the knife and record that content and I haven't got there yet, but that's going to be fun.
Funny, the fundamentals thing is interesting. As you were talking about it, I had this like very distinct memory of an old combatives coach that I worked with for years. From like he was my kickboxing coach when I was a kid, and we did like combatives as I got older. And I remember an example that he gave about like taking 3 steps and opening a doorknob, and then like reaching around, grabbing the other doorknob, and pulling the door shut, as if you had never done that before and were unfamiliar with the motions. And I think this is like something related to like uh closing a gap, head and neck manipulation to like a heel stomp or something. And
Hmm.
you're like, why is it so hard to sequence this? And it's like, because these are motions that your body is not actually accustomed to doing. Whereas like at this point, if I say grab the drawer pull and pull the drawer out, all of those things make sense.
Hmm.
That is like kind of how I view the basics of like getting
Yeah.
into fusion. It's like you actually don't know how to make like these 2 lines do what you want, and it's not what your brain thinks.
Yeah.
So you're literally
Yeah.
learning like it's like baby CAD for
Yeah.
babies.
Yeah. It reminds me in engineering school back in the day, we had an exercise where it was like you had to create an assembly line for like peanut butter crackers, like two crackers with peanut butter in the middle, and they had to be placed in a tray. And so you as engineers had to design the process and you had to get like these students from another class just unrelated and they were told to follow your process specifically and do not deviate and do not make assumptions, follow this process exactly. And so you had to think like, okay, the one side of the cracker is kind of domed. place
Yeah.
that domed side on the table, use the butter knife to put peanut butter on that while holding the cracker. And it's like what you're saying. And it's
Totally.
like they were told, like, do not deviate from what they said. So you'd see people doing stuff where they're like, the dome side is on the inside, and like things were like everything was messed up that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
And that's the way I'm having to think, is like, wait a minute, I just jumped over the fact that I sketched a circle.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I got to go back to the basics of like, okay, this is how you sketch a circle.
Yeah.
You know what I
That
mean?
it
So it's like,
100%. It's like that idea of like, okay, explain it to me like I'm 5.
Yeah.
Having just explained some things to
Yeah.
to a 6-year-old this morning. It was really fun. Bo came out to the shop at like, I think like 6:30 in the morning, and I was soldering,
Mhm.
and I was like, all right, cool. Like, pulled them up, and basically like I took some silver scrap and I let him hold the torch, and we just melted silver. But when I think about the skills that are actually involved in that, I mean, he's using an oxyacetylene
Mhm.
torch, 6 years old. It's like, don't brush your other hand.
Yeah.
All those like little crazy kid movements that you do, don't do any of those. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do you teach that inside of a short motion? It's like, okay, like, keep this hand down. All right. Like, I support the torch with you. And then I'm like, okay. Then I like unweight my hands. I say, okay, you have the torch. And I let him feel what the torch feels like. But when you think about it, it's like, there's so much going on.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
basically how I still feel when I'm using Fusion. Like, I think about all the things that you've said where I'm like, okay, I need to like ground this object. Okay, how do I ground it? And then I'm like, it's not defined. Why is that line blue?
Mhm.
Those are the things that like inside, I feel like a lot of times inside of Rhino, like I just kind of blast through stuff because it wasn't as critical the way that I was using it.
Yeah.
That is
And
where the power is.
and I should also point out, like, if someone's listening to this that's curious about this content, but they do have like moderate experience, like I said, the way that I want to bisect it is like the super, super like 0 level starting from first opening Fusion. It's skippable because it's all compartmentalized to where it's like you could, if you had moderate experience, not like spend all the time, because I could have just recorded like 6 hours straight and then you just press play. And I was
Yeah, it doesn't
I
work.
realized it was going to be trash if I did that. And
Yeah.
so I'm trying to make it so that you could jump in line like 2/3 of the way or a third of the way in, and like, and do well. You know what I mean? So
I'm going to hazard that anybody that's actually serious too is actually just going to sit through the whole thing, because
yeah,
even in basics, like everybody has something that they can shore up or
yeah,
like see
yeah,
a different way, even if it's to go, oh, I don't like the way TJ does that.
yeah,
But I think the majority of people, I think it's going to be sticky. I think they're going to watch the whole thing.
yeah.
Here, how is it going to work as far as like, so if I drive with you somewhere and you tell me where we're going, I will not remember it. If I'm in the driver's seat and we drive somewhere, I'll remember it.
Yeah.
What is going to be like, are they going to do like a dual screen thing and like follow along steps, or how do you envision that?
So the fundamentals part is not a very follow along part.
Okay.
And if you wanted to, you could, but the segments are so short. Like I said, I want to compress them to where each segment is like 4 to 15 minutes. So it's like,
Okay.
I mean, 15 would be on the very long side, but it'd be like, if you're like, you open Fusion, you're like, okay, I'm going to sketch constraints. I'm feeling a little foggy. You could just like watch that video and like you could follow along with it.
Okay.
But I want it bite sized enough where you could just watch the whole segment and be like, okay, I remember that now. And then
Right.
do
Next
it again.
time you go into
Yeah.
your design and you're like, oh, I can't remember this, you just go straight
Yeah.
into the constraint segment.
Whereas the modeling the knife would very much be benefited by following along.
Right.
Because the thing about following along in the fundamentals part is like, all I'm doing is really like pointing and talking. Like this is where this is. And so it's like, if you're following, all you're really going to be doing is like clicking on the same things I'm clicking, which you could do.
That's actually how I would do it. So when I watch this, guaranteed I'll have it dual screen, and I'll just be like, because it's muscle memory.
Yeah.
It's that is opening the doorknob. I have to just be familiar enough of like, oh, I want to create a sketch. Like, okay, that's up in the left-hand corner, like click sketch, like, okay, small things like that. But inside of a 4-minute video, if someone wants to do that, they can do that.
Yeah.
So that's fine. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you going to do are there going to be modeling exercises that are not a knife to like go over some basic concepts, or do you just jump straight into a knife kind
E-
of as the basic project?
Every in the fundamentals part, every tool is going to be used in a simple way that just demonstrates what it does.
Awesome.
And then in the knife, that's where it all comes together. And so if you were like, if you want to know like what is a loft, there will be like, you'll be able to see what a loft is. And the idea of the fundamentals is to show you that it exists and to be a reference for when you decide to use it, what to click on and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of the fundamentals is like, I want you to know everything that exists in this program so that
Right.
you can later remember that it existed and come back to that segment and then apply it to what you're doing.
Love
But
it.
it's going to be a work in progress, dude. And I should make the point, because of the way that it's set up with that channel, that apparatus of like you're logging into a channel, I can upload. I want to have a setup where if you're submitting questions, A, I can answer those questions if they're really simple, but B, if it's a very common question that's not explainable via text,
Right.
I want to have it where I can just append a question answered video in
Right.
the channel, just like a YouTuber would, so
Yep.
that so it's like, if I realize that in one segment I totally skipped a little thing that everyone's stuck on, I can just add another video in there that's like question answered, you know, making sure to select this, you know, blah blah blah. And
Right.
so if you're like already a paid member and you're in there, and it won't be a subscription in terms of monthly, it'll just be flat rate. But
Right.
if you have paid that, you get just all of future videos for that channel.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that
And of course, you're going to like keep updating as you go. So this isn't really like a static
no, it's not static.
thing.
And
Go ahead.
if a segment, like let's say there's a segment about sketch constraints,
Yeah.
and after a while I'm like, wow, people are struggling with that, like
Right.
I
Right.
didn't convey it as well as I could have, I could re-record that segment and replace it,
Oh,
and
I love that.
everyone would get the new version. So it's
Or
like,
do an addendum or
yeah,
whatever, you
so I'm
know?
trying to remind myself that like this is a living, breathing thing, and I want to get it as high quality as possible, but I can always fix it and like improve it.
I really like that. It's just evolving. I mean, that's
Mhm.
everything we do benefits from the ability to like not overthink the first rendition
Yeah.
and leave yourself room for like
Yeah.
expansion because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. I don't know where people are going to get stuck
Right.
until they tell me, you know. So
Right.
we'll find out.
I got stuck everywhere. But dude, it's
Yeah.
been great. I had like so many of these weird little like epiphanies over the last couple of months. And like one thing is just around this concept of consistency, as opposed to like trying to like make larger time to like do these things. Like basically at this point, I'm trying to get into Fusion daily. And I'm not worrying about the time. So like yesterday I got
Mhm.
in, I was in there for 15 minutes, but I modeled a simple part that had been kind of hanging over my head. And it's like, it's done, man. It still stacks. Like the
Mhm.
time stacks. And I struggle with the same things. And then I like answer the question and I learn a little bit more. And I just am seeing that right now, like there's so much value in just like repetitions.
Mhm.
But the repetitions do not have to be like long form,
Mhm.
which I think is how
Yeah.
I've tried to do things over the years so much.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully the compartmentalization that I'm shooting for helps with that, where it's like you could wake up before work in the morning or whatever your situation
Yeah.
is and just be like, I'm just going to watch the next segment that's 6
Yep.
minutes. I'm going to go into Fusion and I'm going to play with those things.
Yep.
And then the next day I'm going to do another thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you have an idea of like how long you feel like this will take people to complete? I mean, that's
Mm,
like how long is a string,
yeah.
but like it sounds like it's kind of an ongoing thing because you have at this point how many hours do you think like the like first course is?
The initial launch, I suspect, would push into the at least 4, probably 5 or 6 hours.
Okay.
of total content.
That is a lot.
Yeah, because I started recording.
Um,
I thought the Fusion fundamentals, I was like, yeah, I could probably knock this out, probably like an hour or two. And I was like, whoa, this is taking longer than I thought. And I had like, I had like a video where I was like, okay, sketches and constraints. And then I looked down at the recording. I'm like, I'm an hour in to talking
yeah,
about sketches and constraints. I'm like, okay. And that was where I was like, okay, I need to bisect this because I don't want 1 hour segments. I want
right,
no more than like 15 minutes so that you
right.
can index it. Because if you can't like go back and be like, well, I know we talked about it in this video, but I don't know if it's 5 minutes in or 55 minutes in.
Right.
It's like,
You and I were probably doing an hour at a time.
yeah,
What we found was those hours, like we were probably focusing for like 15 minutes on some given thing because of how many questions I would have.
yeah.
It would just expand. And that's exactly what you're saying about the constraints right there.
And that's a benefit though with the way that I think this is set up over being live,
Yeah,
in that you can backtrack to the segments
totally.
constantly.
Yep.
Like, because like we would talk for an hour, and then if you were on the computer without me,
Yeah.
the things that I said are lost, right?
Yeah. If I hadn't written it down,
yeah, exactly.
honestly, like we should have recorded
Yeah.
all of that. That would have
Mhm.
been super smart. I mean, even I should have recorded it just so I could go back.
Yeah.
But you're right. It would have been crazy to be like, okay, on the 13th day, 48 minutes in is that nugget
Yeah. So I want those nuggets to be findable,
accessible.
first order retrievability, as Burnley
Ooh.
and Adam Savage say.
Oh, I like that. I'm getting
Yeah.
getting added to that,
Yeah.
dude. Okay. Do you have a timeline?
So I have steel coming for the new project I'm working on.
Sick.
I want to launch this thing before the steel gets here, because as soon as the steel gets here, like, this is my plate will get overfilled if I end up having to do both. So the new knife's in a holding pattern, and it's probably 2 to 3 weeks, but I'm trying to front load it. I'm trying to get this thing going. So it could be the next 10 days possibly.
Okay.
We'll see.
I'd like to think that I'm on the testing.
Yeah.
I want to be in the
There we go.
I want to give it a shakedown. That's
Mhm.
probably a lot of people that want to give it a shakedown. I can't wait, man.
Yeah. Yeah, Dalton's going to give it a shakedown. He wants to learn, so
Okay.
yeah. It'd
All right.
be cool.
Nice. You feel like that like sums up CAD course?
Yeah, it probably
now?
about does it. Yeah.
Yeah. Take a deep breath.
Mhm. Dude, I'm going to lose my voice. I was recording content before this pod. The first time I recorded, did like a 4-hour session of just recording and talking the whole time. And
Oh,
at the end, I was like, "Am I getting sick?" I was like, "Why am I go like a frog?" So it's like it's actually like harder than I was expecting. But
that's a lot of I would think that is a lot of content to think about. Like, I mean, I remember like even just doing the hours, like I couldn't process any more information than
mhm,
we were doing an hour. I was leaving, my ears were smoking. I mean, it's
yeah,
just like you're learning so much around like just these concepts, and then it is really critical how you use them. And that's the thing. It's like you can design poorly in Fusion pretty easily.
mhm,
Designing well and like making, I think you had framed it as like robust models, is it's not that it's hard, it's just that you have to be thinking ahead the whole
there's an
time.
order of operations.
Right.
Yeah.
Order of I love order of operations.
Mhm.
It's like if you can just teach that around anything.
Yeah. Like, I'll
Right.
have a segment that's just called like timeline discipline. And
Totally.
it's just like, I'll talk for 5 minutes about why it's important and stuff like that. So if you're like, wait,
Ooh.
what's going on with the timeline discipline, watch that. Like, I really want to, some of the segments are not going to be like, oh, the extrusion tool. It's going to be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
a little bit more philosophical of like, this
Yes.
tool is a weapon because it makes this happen and it makes this much more efficient. This
Yes.
tool is redundant and should never be used.
Right.
And here is why, from a like intellectual, structural, like higher level way.
Those are the things. That's what I mean about having something that is geared like past just technical for a knife. There are order and operations in general to make a knife. Like, yeah, there's some things that can be done out of order and everybody has different ways of doing things. But in general, if you are learning, having oversight from someone who is actually doing the process is a huge time saver.
Mm-hmm.
I've spent a lot of time learning processes that are unrelated to knife making and then adapting them. So you and I have talked about that idea. Like, okay, if you are talking to an old machinist, he's going to tell you to basically going to tell you to buy the biggest machine you can afford, right? The heaviest machine. Okay. As a knife maker, you start to realize that actually some of those tropes aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk to someone who's doing knives, they might have very different information because it is related to what you're doing, not general industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm excited. It's good on you, man. You are doing a lot right now.
Yeah. I'm not busy though. Right.
No, it's good, man. This is great. Like, I love this. This is one more aspect for you of some type of residual income, like, which, you know, I'm such a huge proponent of. I think that, like, as makers, one of the best areas we can spend time is figuring out how to, you know, maximize our time and get a return on it. But it also, man, it kind of triggers a lot of, I think, what I look for in the industry, which is it's a positive asset for the industry as a whole. It makes everybody that does it better. It creates community, right? Like, this is, I mean, you tie this into the podcast. Like, I keep thinking about the pod and I'm like, my biggest goal is another platform to create a positive community inside of the knife industry and create connection between, like, makers and customers. And, you know, just kind of, you create an ecosystem that's a positive. So I think that's pretty rad. You're doing a good thing.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun
teaching it. Okay. We had a couple of questions that came through the Discord.
Actually just one.
Just one? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's like 1 in 6. So
I think his name is Will. His name is Will. He was asked, what do we do about naming knives in this day and age? How do we do that? He's a knife maker, so he wants to know. What's your approach for naming a new Burnley model?
Okay. This is weird. There's a couple things here. One, I don't ever worry about if it's a name that's been used before. Okay. They're knives. There are cool names, and there are things that relate to the design. I don't have a formal process. It's a feeling. Like, I name by a feeling. Like, I pick the knife up and I'm like, this feels like an ibis. Why does it feel like an ibis? It's kind of like beaky, like this bird. And
yeah,
I've got, if you notice, like, I guess I have a lot of, like, natural names: tuna, squid, ibis, pelican. I've got some numerical names. Why are they numerical? Because they felt the design, like, where I was designing from emotionally, felt some like M69. I had an M1. I've had, like, strafe is another one. So, like, strafe is like the way that the knife felt, like, from a movement standpoint. Obviously, my goal is not to name a knife that someone else has named a knife, but, like, I've had a Whisper, I've had a Raven, there's some, like, I have the Kwaiken, which is the worst name ever because it's basically naming a Bowie knife the Bowie. And it's like, what happened with that is, I would say, like, at this point, when most people think of Kwaiken, I bet my knife is, like, in the top couple.
Oh, for sure.
Right? That wasn't always the case. Yeah. That was not, like, when people heard Kwaiken, that was not the case. So that was a situation where I named a knife after
a genre, in a way.
A genre that was, like, but, like, a way previous genre that was a fixed blade that meant something else, but then kind of became a catch-all. So I do try to avoid that. And then from the factory collaboration standpoint, it gets trickier because most companies will not use a name that has been used before for trademark issues. And so I think that there is a lot of value in having a unique name that can transfer to a company if you go that route.
There are many knives that are different named as customs than they are as production for
Yes,
that
I would guess
reason.
you and I both have them.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and some companies like they don't even want to get close. So it could be
Exactly.
like, maybe it's not even a knife, but it's like something that is in this field, like it's a sharpener and it just has the same name and they just don't want to approach it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Custom side, like, yeah, I would you say like, do you have like a general kind of format for names? Like, do you have something that you pull from inspirationally?
So I like the idea of naming by feel, like you said.
Yeah.
And that's that's the way I go. But like as far as not naming it something that's been done, I usually just go for like at the surface, like I'll Google like Overland knife, and like I will
Right.
usually just go like first page of Google and just make sure that it's not like, oh, Boker Overland, damn it, like you know what I
Yeah.
mean, like so I usually make like a superficial attempt to make sure that I'm not just right on top of some new knife.
First pass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't worry. I'm not like hiring an attorney to go make sure it hasn't been trademarked.
Yeah.
And like, if someone I know has used it, I won't use it. You know what I mean? Obviously,
Yeah.
but it's like you said, like if you're gonna try to be big and corporate and like hire an attorney or like try to do like a deep dive investigation on like the durability of the name and from a legal standpoint, it's like you're really opening a can of worms. So
Yeah.
probably just name it what feels good. And I've had some names that end up in conflict occasionally. Honestly, never really a big deal.
Yeah.
As long as you're not like they're my competitor, I'm going to name something that's like eerily close as like a snide thing.
Yeah. And I'm
That's
like,
different.
in general, I would say like I'm pretty aggressive as far as like my interpretation of designs being too close.
Yeah.
Like I have a ethical code around what I consider a design to be too close, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's for myself and for others. Names are just one where it's kind of like, and I guess this relates to the custom side because it's like, okay, if you have a Burnley Whisper and 20 years before that, there was a Lyle Whisper, and my knife is not a copy of that knife, I have a hard time thinking it's a problem. And saying that as like, I mean, like if someone names a knife after one of my knives, it's like that has happened. That's probably the least of my concerns.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I say it though, I guess like, yeah, what you're saying I would do now. I do like if I come up with a name that I think is cool, I'm going to at least do like a pass, Google like custom knife tuna, right? Tuna folder, and see if a contemporary or a company is using that name. And I guess if that existed, I probably would just move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's fair.
Yeah. It's an interesting dilemma though, the naming the knife thing. Like if you really are going for a unique name, it's getting harder and harder really quick. You find out that real quick when you like submit designs to CRKT because they do the full legal entire just they have an attorney check that name for trademark because they have to. They could get sued. And so like the hardest challenges I've ever had in naming is when I'm talking to CRKT and I'm like, I'm out of ideas and everything's kicking back from like the legal department, and like they we joke about with CRKT guys all the time about how that works. And but the knives that I make in my shop, like I kind of put that out of mind, like you said. But there's
an interesting process.
Every once in a while you get like a gold nugget because like Overland, we got the trademark with CRKT. I still can't believe that, right?
Yeah.
But then there's other times where I'll do something where it's like really obscure sounding to me.
Yeah.
And they're like, nope, it bounced. I'm like, what?
Yep.
And they're like, yep, this manufacturer out of Lithuania, like they are selling them in the US. I'm like, what? Like, geez. I thought I was really obscure.
There's another thing I think that comes into naming too, which is like, it's your personality. So it's like, I don't know, lately the why concept keeps popping up. So it's like, yeah, there's lots of cool names, but why are you naming it that? Why
Mm-hmm.
is that your name? So like
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking about the little Barlow fixed blade that I have with Boker. Don't want to call it a Barlow. It's a Barlow pattern knife. So I call it the BFF. So culturally, everybody knows, at least in the US, like what BFF means. And it stands for Barlow Front Fixed. That's like my acronym for it. But it's like, you know,
Yeah.
best friends forever. And
Play
it's
on
like this
words.
little cute, useful knife.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think you're the section of the industry that you're in plays a large part in how you name the knives, because there's power in a name. So
Yeah.
who are you trying to get to understand your knife, and who do you want to feel an attachment to it?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that plays a lot. And I think
Yeah.
that if you can answer that question, I think that helps you start to develop names that probably are not as frequently used, because they're
Yeah.
literally more personal to you.
Yeah. Yeah. I've very recently started to think that my naming structure is probably going to move towards geographical places that are unique to me. That
Sheboygan.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah. It's actually hard to do that because a lot of names are
Right.
like they don't work. But if I think about the geographical places that mean something to me,
Yeah.
this next knife that's coming is one of those. And so
Ooh.
I hope to make that happen more. But
Okay.
yeah,
Are you gonna
that's a
make a
good point.
geocache out of it? Because that would be sick.
There we go. There we
Dude,
go.
I like that idea. Remember when Worksharp was doing the boxes?
Mm.
Wasn't it Worksharp? Wasn't Worksharp doing boxes? Worksharp was doing
Oh yeah, they
boxes.
did. Yeah, there was
Just
a
like in like a
yeah.
Yeti.
Yep.
That was sick.
Mm-hmm. That was
Such like a good, again, community building. It's gamification. There's so much there that is so fun, and it like ties into kind of like the ethos of self-reliance and like
mm-hmm.
adventure. It's badass.
Yep.
Okay. What, I thought there was another question.
So the other one wasn't a question. It was a note that I took after our last pod because we kind of like put instinctual decision making on a pedestal at the end of the last episode.
Yep.
And right after the episode, it occurred to me, I'm like, so instinctual has a positive connotation.
Yep.
Impulsive has a negative connotation most of the time.
Okay.
What's the difference between the negative sense of that sort of decision making, impulsive side versus the instinctual side? How do you like draw the line?
Okay. Ready for it? I think that an impulsive decision is one where there's no forethought involved. Okay. I would argue that an instinctual decision is one that is informed by experience in general, right? Like as we're using it, I would say like your instinct is a muscle that is honed. Like people talk about street smarts. Well, what is street smarts? Street smarts are different. If you grow up in the mountains of Idaho, it's going to look different than, you know, like the streets of LA.
Yeah.
You got a different thing, right?
Yeah.
Idaho, you're going to see a bear. LA, you're not probably going to see a bear. There might be something dangerous. It's still street smarts.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do they cross over? I don't know, but there's probably a movie in that.
Yeah. A Hallmark movie.
Or a reality show.
Yeah.
We're taking Bear Grylls and we are dropping him into East LA.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With a backpack and
with a
knife.
backpack.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
How do you think about it?
So I don't know. It's a little bit a harder one for me because it's not like definitionally I can separate them.
Okay.
But the question I have is in the moment, the gut that is telling you, how are you to ensure that it is an informed decision by historical precedent? Because if it's instinctual, you're not over analyzing it. It's a gut feeling. What does that feeling differ from like a true impulsive situation where it's like shiny object syndrome?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Let's go. I can only relate this to myself, and I'm curious to know if you have the same thing. So like I'm neurodivergent. I actually have a problem with impulse control. I know this. For me, I can often tell the times where I'm impulsive because it's exciting. Like there's a different feeling. I would say instinctual for me lacks either a like frenetic response, a lust response, excitement. There's all of these words where it's like
It's less
a shiny
emotional.
object,
It's
right?
less emotional.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
if I'm making or about to make a impulsive decision, I feel like there's a lot of times where I realize for a split second that that is happening. I just
Mhm.
can't always stop it.
Yeah.
How do you do not seem like an impulsive person?
Um, I might be more than I let on. I don't know. I mean, that's hard to answer, but like the thing about instinctual, to your point, is like when an instinctual decision pops into my head, like you need to do this.
Yeah,
I think the feeling that I usually get is relief, because it feels like I just
ooh,
escaped it feels like I just escaped tension when the instinctual like option came about. So it's like if I'm like kind of racking my brain over like, oh, which direction am I going to go? Do I make a bigger knife or a smaller knife?
right.
And when the instinct kicks in and it's like, no, this is the direction,
Yeah,
it's almost like a relief, because it's like I no longer have to sit there and like struggle with the
yeah,
question.
yes,
Whereas with impulsive, to your point, it's more of, like you said, it's more of like, ooh, that sounds fun. That sounds like
right.
sounds like a adventurous thing to do and exciting, which is not all bad,
No,
but it's like there's a difference between gambling and like following that like sense of relief when like the your subconscious saw the opening,
yeah,
and there's like that sense of relief of having noticed it.
yeah,
And then, like I said in the last episode, trusting the opening is there and that you're not like being deceived. But it's like if you're, I don't know, in a more impulsive way, it's like if you go buy a car off a lot, like that can
right.
be very impulsive scenario. Like I've been
Sure.
there, a lot of people have been there. It's like I feel like there's a lot less relief involved in something like that. It's usually high emotion situation. It's like,
I can add. I think there's another layer to this too, which is I would say I can rationalize a impulsive decision.
mhm,
So I can sit there and rationalize for a while and then make the decision and then instantly realize I made a mistake. Whereas I would say with like instinctual decisions, that doesn't happen. Like I don't regret, or I can't think of times where I have trusted my intuition and have regretted it. That's not to say that I didn't make maybe the wrong choice in the moment as it related to like a financial gain or like something like that. But I still think that those over a timeline were the right decisions.
mhm,
Whereas I think a lot of the impulsive decisions are based, yeah, like you said, like it's like excitement. I'll get caught up in the moment. I'll make a decision and then I'll think, oh man, like what was I thinking? That's like not that that doesn't align with what I'm trying to do.
mhm,
Um, I think that inside there is back to that question of why
mhm,
and like alignment. So like what is important to you? Why are you doing it? Does this decision align with your overall goal?
here's a we talked about this after the pod the last time we didn't record it. I think this captures the emotional state of the two for me. Is like with impulsive in human relationships, like let's say it's like you're dating or something. With
Mm-hmm.
impulsive, it's more of like the lust factor of like
Sure.
the excitement factor. Whereas if you've ever been lucky enough to like meet the one,
Right.
that feeling of relief that comes
Yeah.
from that, like that's like the instinctual trigger of like, this is a low pressure relief like let off when you make
Yeah.
that discovery
Yeah.
versus this is a like exponential level of excitement
Right.
scenario. It's like that those two, that contrasting those two like really explains it for me, if that makes sense.
That one's so hard to wrap around though, because like
Yeah.
I have experienced that legitimately one time,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm married to Maddie.
Same.
But I had never experienced it that way. So it's like, if you haven't experienced that, that reference is not relevant.
Yeah.
That's weird.
For me, that's the most clear, but yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
like
that
people,
makes yeah, I guess looking at framing it around that is interesting, because yeah, there's obviously like there's excitement around it, but there was, even from the beginning, there was like a certain type of security in the decisions that I was making, that even if it had ultimately like not worked out, I still think like I was making the right decision.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's an interesting one. It was funny because last week after we had recorded, I sent you, I think like a day or two later, I had sent you that post from Housemate.
Yeah.
And he was legitimately talking about the same thing.
Almost word for word.
Yeah. And like totally unrelated, just like, don't dwell on your decisions, like trust your gut, make the choice.
I almost have to I almost am inclined to bring that up right now because it was
so
accurate.
On the nose.
Yeah. Okay. I will have it in just a second. It is okay. Overthinking is the biggest waste of human energy. Trust yourself, make a decision, and gain more experience. There's no such thing as perfect. You cannot think your way into perfection. Just take action.
Yes.
And that is awesome.
I love it. So shout out to Brian over at Housemade.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I don't know him either, but I see a lot of his stuff. You know, I was thinking about that, like just like pod standpoint. Because I love our industry so much. I just feel like it feels nice when you like shout people out, because there's a lot of good people in our industry.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Speaking of,
okay,
do you know Lynch clips?
No.
You know, like the Lynch clips that like go on.
You saying it slower isn't going to make me understand it more.
Yeah, that's valid. I mean, the Lynch L-Y-N. No, I'm just kidding. So I believe it's.
Hold on, I'm looking him up right now.
I'm about to shout him out, and I'm trying to actually double check that his first name is correct in my brain. But Lynch is the last name, and he stopped by my shop. And another really cool guy that I was really excited to meet. He's from Washington.
Oh, you know what? I just came across these because I think he does a wire clip replacement.
Yeah, he does replacement clips for like everything.
Super cool, dude. That's so weird. Legitimately, yesterday I was looking at
Casey Lynch. Okay,
Casey Lynch. Okay, so you're gonna shout out Casey Lynch.
Yeah,
I kind of muddled that one.
No, I know that was a goof. That was a goof. But no, Casey Lynch. Yeah, he stopped by the shop. I really enjoyed talking to him. And yeah,
where is he?
Lynch, Washington,
Northwest.
Yeah, northwestern Washington.
I'm trying to find. Does he have an Insta, or is this like does he not exist on the socials?
Lynch. I don't know, honestly. He just showed up in my shop and he's an awesome guy. But he gave me this.
Oh,
see the text on there?
TJ's last word.
So it's a titanium with brass.
Ooh,
yeah. But anyway, I just want to shout him out. That was cool.
Nice.
That was really cool to have him in the shop.
Small world, man. Yeah, I was having a design conversation with Boker around the wire clip on the new Keyhon with the crossbar lock.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like searching stuff, and I came across his clips. I was like, that is awesome. It's a deep carry, like titanium replacement clip for some of the knives that utilize wire clips. I love wire clips, but if you want to like do an upgrade, Casey's stuff is awesome. Small world.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Good stuff.
What else, man? Is there anything else like you want to go over today?
Shoot. That about does it for me, I think.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. brain's about fried after CAD courses and then a podcast. And
I'm feeling good today. I have, I finished, today was my 4-month check-in with my chiropractor for a back injury. And I just had my second set of x-rays done and it is awesome. I'm back better than neutral and some of like the damage, including like bone reabsorption. So like areas where my spine was like having a very hard time and starting to like grow bone has actually started to like, it started to dissolve.
That's crazy,
dude. It's crazy. I was going 3 times a week and then 2 times a week up until this point for 4 months straight. So I just like graduated. Feels really good.
That's awesome.
Just like the CAD thing, everything has been this like kind of process of linking. So like the gym thing I'm on today, I think was like my maybe like 23rd day of 5 days a week. Feeling really good. Got Maddie going. Today is her first week of every day in the gym. Feels good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I think we owe it, dude. It's funny. Like makers spent so much time in their head. And like, there are times where you're spending like more time at the bench or the grinder or the milling machine or whatever. And then there's times where you're spending more time in your head. Neither of those things do anything for your body, but your body supports the other things.
Yeah. Body and brain are not separate.
Not separate.
Yeah. They're the same thing. Yeah.
They like, even from a standpoint of like clear thinking and like speed of thought and like cognition, I think just having a system that's like functioning well, dude, it's a big improvement. Yeah. I look at it like the benefit of like working for myself. I think the like fitness is the debt that I have to pay for that. It's like an easy way to look at it where you're like, I can do this, but like I don't have a backup plan. So it's been good, man. Yeah, that's all I got. Awesome. I'm just kind of cranking, making stuff for the Kentucky Custom Knife Show.
Cool.
And
yeah, we really got onto some other topics, but next week let's talk about that.
Dude, that's fine. There's not much to talk about there, really. I love the show. There is. We can talk about half measures next episode.
I've been thinking a lot about those.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm going to take note in Trello. Half measures.
Half measures. I love it.
And your notebook's a half measure. Sorry. You need Trello.
I know. I've got it. I just forgot my password. You guys, thank you for listening. As always, thanks for being part of this community, and leave us a review.
Appreciate it. Peace.
Join Discord so we can have a conversation.